Hello and welcome back to Preo Pixel. This is one of the more rare English episodes we do. It's an interview with Joseph Hewitt. He was with Westwood in the early days of their creative period and was with Rick Parks, together with Rick Parks, partially responsible for these beautiful paletted artworks of all the Westwood games like Eye of the Beholder and Lens of Law, and This interview is and will only be in English, so there will be no German translation. I'm sorry. But on the other hand, I also try to find visual references for most, maybe all of the important topics, so it may be beneficial for you to look now and then into the video feed, not just hear it like a podcast. Okay, let's start it. Have fun.
Okay, I'll start with the first story.
Yes, maybe we can start with pictures you found.
All right, so this picture there, that's from BattleTech, the first one, BattleTech Crescent Hawk's Inception. And the first story about this stupid picture is if you have the manual for the... No, this is from the second. This is from Crescent Hawk's Revenge, the second one. So I used to belong to this modem multi-user BBS system called Multicom here in Vegas. And it was very socially active. Like, we would meet in person every weekend. During the summer, we'd hang out at this park, Bob Baskin Park. And in the winter, we would hang out at Shakey's till they threw us out because, 20, 30 people showing up and not many of these kids ordering any food. They eventually caught on. But by the next year rolled around, the manager was different. So they didn't even know, they didn't recognize us anymore. So we just kept going back every year. And there were two Shakey's. So when they threw us out of one, we'd go to the other, and they'd throw us out of that one. Anyway, so I'm walking up, and there's this kid who does not like me for reasons I won't get into. But he has the manual for Crescent Hawk's Revenge. And him and his friends are looking at it, because it was basically page after page of mech stats. And I'm like, what do you got there? And he's like, oh, it's BattleTech. It's, it's some mechs. And I take the book out of his hand and flip to the back where my picture is. And I go, who's this asshole? And hand him the book back. But anyway, I had that story and I posted that on Facebook a bazillion years ago. I'm working in Australia at Interzone Games. And I come in one morning.
Uh-huh.
Oh, maybe. There it goes. There they go. There we go. All right, so the second one, so that's one of my designers. He's standing there because all the picture head was labeled circa 1991. So he had T-shirts and coffee mugs made for circa, and he had a cafe press store. So my mom bought one of these stupid shirts. But it gets worse. So this office park we were in were these little office buildings, and the little building next to ours had better snack machines. So I went out of the office just to walk over there and peruse their snack selection. And when I came back, this was posted all over the office. No, that's it for that things with that stuff. But yeah, occasionally, because I guess that Cafe Press store is still there if you know where to look for it, and people keep occasionally finding it. But I have a bunch more old Westwood pictures and all. Like, here's the Tiberian Sun team, the art team with James L. Jones. So that big, huge group shot, that's Westwood.
Yeah.
Right before we were bought by Virgin. That guy with the pot belly right in the middle, he was our agent. Daniel Berry or something like that. But there's the CNC art team with James L. Jones. That's the eye of the... Okay, so in the big group photo, I'm the guy with the black shirt and the tie. just left of center, long hair. James Earl Jones, I'm directly above him. You can really only see my face because my shirt's sort of blending in. My hair was completely flat that day. Then what I think is an Eye of the Beholder team photo. That's me in the black overcoat. So other people in that photo. So I'm in the black overcoat. So going clockwise, kneeling down in front of me, that's Paul Mudra. He was audio director. Joe Bostic, who was programmer. He's also the lead programmer on all the CNC games. Directly above him is Phil Goro, who was the lead programmer on Eye of the Beholder. To his left in the background in that V-neck sweater, it's Aaron Powell. He was an artist. The other way, on the other side of Phil's shoulder in the background, that's Glenn Sperry, who's the brother of Brett Sperry, who was one of the co-founders of Westwood, and he ran Playtest. Bill Stokes there, and then tall in the background, that's the great Rick Parks. So all these super, really good, oh my God, that's beautiful artwork you see in Westwood games, that was Rick Parks, who unfortunately passed away. The Eye of the Beholder picture there with the giant beholder. So there you can see me with the tie. Yeah, I'm sure he was dying in there. So down at the bottom you have Paul again, and kneeling next to him is Dwight, Face of a Thousand Lies Okuhara.
Face of a Thousand Lies? Is there a story behind that? No, probably not.
Well, there's he's the master of all the pranks, stories, and all the stuff that go on. There's a great Westwood story about Blizzard, and we don't know how true it is because it happened to Dwight. So it's probably like the last CES before E3 took over. It might have been Comdex, one of those two old shows before the video game industry formed E3. So he's demoing Command & Conquer, and it's the first time we're showing it. So this is also after Blizzard had launched Warcraft, the first one. So every Blizzard employee is at this show, and they're all running around in their black Blizzard t-shirts. Just living it up because, they have this great selling successful game. So Dwight's demoing it for just some random couple, and he's showing the game. And these guys come up behind them, and they're just sort of standing there, and they're all in suits, and they're kind of pointing at the screen and whispering to each other. Then the couple leaves, and one of the guys comes up and says, "Wow, your Command & Conquer looks a lot like our Warcraft." And Dwight goes, "Really? That's funny because your Warcraft looks a lot like our Dune 2. And they're like, their eyes are up. You're the guys that did Dune 2, and scuttled off. So we don't know how true that story is because it's Dwight Face of a Thousand Lies Okuhara.
Yeah, nonetheless, it's a cool story.
If you ever get in contact with Mike Legg, who is up and to the right of Dwight there, he can tell you all the Dwight stories. He was integral in many of Mike's plots.
Mm-hmm. I would love to, yeah.
Yeah, so that's Mike Legg standing up there with that goofy grin on his face, holding the folder or something. Lead program on the Carandia games, Monopoly, CD-ROM. Yeah. Hidden behind him is Bill Cram, who, and over to the other side, there's me in my goofy little tie and swoopy hair. Marco Herrera is then behind me, and then next to me to my left is Frank Klepacki, who was also an audio guy. He's the guy who did the soundtrack for CNC. So
all the other Westwood games, yeah.
Yeah. So the black and white picture is right after I first joined Westwood. That is the box picture for the...
Oh, look at all this beautiful hair!
Yeah. So my hair is still growing back out because when I got fired from Unicorn Software, I thought, oh crap, I'm going to have to get a real job. So I cut my hair. And I had a mullet, so it wasn't like really long, but I grew it back into a mullet, but it's still growing out in that picture. Left to right in the back, that's Lewis Castle, who's was the lead programmer in the Mars Saga, co-founder of Westwood. Paul Mudra again. Last I heard, he was working at Naughty Dog. Me. Bottom left is Dave Detmer, who's programmer, and then Andrew Bagnoff, who was a longtime friend of mine who worked with me at Unicorn Software, who I brought over to Westwood, who I believe works for the UN now in Italy.
That's an interesting story behind, I think. So you both knew each other from high school?
Unicorn Software. So actually, Brett Sperry worked at Unicorn Software while I was a student. So Unicorn Software was an educational software company, but they also ran Computer Tutors, which was like an after-school learning program, taught math and reading and all that sort of stuff and basic programming. So I went there as a student, and then I started working at the software company, and the very first game I ever worked on was Lion King, which got renamed to Wonders of the Lion King because Lion King magazine sent them a cease and desist order.
Oh, not Disney?
No. I mean, but you can't copyright the word Animal Kingdom. It's too broad.
Yeah.
But the magazine sent them a cease and desist, and this would have been, early to mid '80s. Anyway, for all the artwork for the Commodore 64 version of Animal Kingdom, they paid me with a koala pad, like a Commodore 64 drawing pad. And at the time,
I was thinking of a pet koala, so a plush koala or something like that.
No, it's a little 2-button drawing tablet, and that's how you drew on the
I remember.
Commodore. And what they cost, like what, $60-$80 at the time, and yeah, so I thought I was getting a great deal, but in retrospect, they were ripping me off from day one. But I guess Brett worked as a programmer there, but he quit at almost the same way I did, where he had a little heart-to-heart talk with him, like, hey, you're doing this, I want to do this, and this, and da-da-da-da-da. And he wound up quitting right as I started working for the software company. So he hired me because he kind of felt sorry for me because I had worked for, and that's how I got started at Westwood. Because I didn't have any samples of my work or anything I had done because I just sort of had an ultimatum. They were paying me as an independent contractor, but they were treating me as an employee.
Oh.
And certain things I had to do. And I was like, look, you either got to start paying me as an employee and taking out taxes and all that sort of stuff and insurance, or I can't work for you anymore. And they said, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. And then, so I had everything packed, ready to go. So he said it was fine. I unpacked everything. He comes in like an hour later and goes, you know what? I talked to my lawyer, my finance guy, and they don't think it's a good idea. So if you're going to quit, you should leave. So I left.
Yeah, I would probably have done the same. But I have to say, looking at your Moby Games page, the naming of the edutainment title you did is phenomenal. Decimal Dungeon, Percentage Panic, Fraction Attack. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that was all June and Jeff. And actually, Lewis wound up doing some art. He formed his own company called Out of the Blue Graphics. And on one of the games, like Fraction Action or something, when you load it up, there's a title page, like a blue sky, and a floppy disk, like not a 5 1/4. What was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 1/4 is the bigger size, dropping out of the sky.
Oh.
Then you got the Westwood 10-year anniversary picture where they just sort of separately took everybody's picture and photoshopped us all together.
Oh, that's right. There was this games compilation 10 years anniversary or something like that, right?
Yeah, and that's when we changed over to the green logo. The old logo was the blue and gold one.
Mm-hmm.
Then the picture of me sitting next to Brett on the floor, that's right when we were in this office. It wasn't even an office park. It was just like a little 2-story office mall almost. And we just kept taking over more and more of it, like breaking down the walls in between the different units. We had just took over the last of one of the big buildings, and we were having like a meeting, and yeah, I don't even know where this picture came from.
So that looks like just a room without any furnishing.
Yeah, we had just taken over this part of the office, so we were talking about, who's going to get what office and who's going to be moving and all that sort of stuff.
For a second, I thought it was Chris Roberts besides you. It looks a little bit like him.
Oh, no, that's Brett Sperry, founder of Westwood, creator of Command & Conquer. And the next picture, I don't know what team this is. Left to right.
What happened to your hair?
Donald Wang. This is right when I'm starting.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Donald Wang, who's an artist, that guy was a bard. He showed up. He went to a tennis club to play tennis, and wound up being the tennis pro. They took over. So he was now the tennis pro at this tennis club. He signed up for a martial arts class at UNLV, and the teacher didn't show up. So he wound up teaching the class. He would get the most beautiful girls would just throw themselves at him. I don't understand it. The man was obviously had some magical talent or sold his soul to the devil or something. I don't know. But next to him is Maureen Starkey. She was Westwood's first artist. And you can see her style in a lot of the early stuff, like Hillsfar, in the early Battletech game. Then Paul Moodger, the audio guy again. Lewis Castle, co-founder of Westwood, and then me with my salmon shirt and white pants. And I'll have you know, those pants, they unzipped and became shorts. That's how cool those pants were. I'm still trying to find the picture with all the portraits of the eye of the beholder. I know it's on here somewhere. I threw it in the directory. Because this is the machine I was working on when I was like, hey, I should collect all those portraits and send it to Mike. He'll think it's funny.
So I'm looking at the 10 years anniversary picture. A lot of people there.
Yeah.
So 10 years, was it 95, 96?
So it would have been, 90. I think it was 95. It could have been as late as 96, but at Westwood, it was formed in 85. I joined in 88, and I was there up until around 2004, 2003.
Yeah.
And they EA closed the studio 2004.
How many people were there in 88 at Westwood? 20?
No. It would have been more like 30 something. Yeah. In 88? No. Let me try and picture what the office was like when I came in. It was just that section and then the one office downstairs. So 1, 2, maybe 20.
Yeah.
In 88. But it quickly grew.
Know how these SSI deal worked out?
Westwood did the 3D view that was used in the Gold Box games. So we created that technology, and this was this is before I started. They sold that to SSI. SSI used that in their demo to get the license for the Dungeons and Dragons games.
Mm-hmm.
So as a sort of returning the favor, they're like, "Hey, thanks for helping us, get the license. What games do you guys want to do with the D&D license?" Instantly, they wanted to basically copy Dungeon Master, which is what Eye of the Beholder was with the D&D license. SSI was not on board. They didn't think that was a good idea. SSI was not a smart company, by the way. They were like, "You guys are more known for, California Games, World Games, all those sports games that were popular back in the early 80s. Westwood had done conversions of those from like the older machines to the Atari ST and the Amiga.
For Epics, right?
Yeah, for Epics. So they had done a lot of those games. So they wanted us to do something like that. I say us, I still wasn't there at this point. They wanted to do something like that with the Dungeons & Dragons license, which is where Hillsfar came from, which is one of the first games I worked on. So after that, then we could do something else that we wanted. So after we did Hillsfar, we did Dragon Strike and Eye of the Beholder. We got bought by Virgin Games after Eye of the Beholder 2. So SSI did Eye of the Beholder 3 themselves. Though we helped, it was still them. So that's why it feels so different and it's unbalanced. And I'll be honest with you, I played it for maybe an hour and never went back and stopped. It was just wasn't fun and it was poorly balanced.
You told us about your koala pet and how you started drawing art for the C64. I bet there was a different process at Westwood.
So I remember just being amazed. So we're trying to get them to greenlight Battletech Crescent Hawk's Inception, the first one, on the Apple II. And I'm trying to mock up some screenshots of what the graphics would look like. And it's very difficult with whoever I was. And I was like, if I had a mouse for this. And Brett says, here's a blank check.
Did you draw it up with just a keyboard?
I must have had a pad I don't remember. But I didn't have a mouse.
Okay,
I didn't have a mouse. And Brett says, he writes a blank check, gives it to me, and goes, go to Century 23. Brett and Lewis met while working at Century 23, which was like a computer store. I have very vague memories of it. But he was like, yeah, go there and buy a mouse. So I took a blank check, got my card, drove to Century 23, bought an Apple mouse, came back, and was drawing on it. And I was just amazed at, this was such a different experience than what was happening at Unicorn where, nothing happened. But so yeah, it was like a professional game developer versus mom and pop crappy educational games. All right, I found another picture, by the way. This is the Commodore 64 title page. It doesn't look as good as it does because, you're looking at it on a modern monitor. And that's actual size. Do you remember there was all that stuff blended together, the pixels? Yeah, pixel art all blended together on a TV. So
for Battletech, you started to make some mock-ups. Do you had to read the rule books or?
I had been playing Battletech back then, so.
Oh, okay. So you knew.
If you play the Battletech Crescent Hawk's Inception, and you in the very end in that Star Lab maze, which I am unfortunately totally responsible for.
Yeah, I think that's where I quit.
Yeah, so this is my first ever actual design thing I did. They said add some gameplay. It's like, okay. So I created this giant maze, and you had to get the RGB code, the R code, the B code, and open all the doors. I wanted every time you put in the wrong code, a security robot would be released somewhere in the maze, so you'd have some combat to break up the board. But they were like, no, this is too much already. But the star map is not mine. That was what they dictated to be the copy protection. There was a map room at the end, and in the manual there was a circle around some planets, and you had to go and walk over those planets to highlight them. And that was the copy protection. You get the white code, and then with the white code, you go into the room and do something, and that was the end of the game. But the maze, I unfortunately am very, very sorry for.
Do you remember how this Battletech license came together? Is it no D&D is Wizards of the Coast? Battletech is it FASA or something?
FASA, yeah, we did stuff with FASA.
Yeah.
FASA was known back then for shooting loose and quick with license deals and then not paying people. We actually did a whole game design for a Shadowrun game.
Oh, really?
That they pulled the plug on at the last minute, but
oh no,
they were forced to pay us for it. We took them to court, so they had to pay us for the design work we did.
Oh, that's too bad. I would have loved to play a Westwood Shadowrun game.
And they did use some of those elements in I think it was an NES game.
Yeah, I think they did an NES and a Mega Drive game.
Oh, I found it. I found the Eye of the Beholder picture.
Oh.
So top left, that's Michael Legg. Then me. Then Edie Larimore, who's one of our receptionists. Phil Gurrow, the lead programmer. Aaron Powell, artist. Paul Mudra, the audio guy again. And Big Frank Saxon, who was another artist. So for a while, it was Big Frank and Little Frank for Frank Kopacki and Frank Saxon.
So, speaking of Eye of the Beholder, a friend of mine did the artwork for the C64 version that was released 2 years ago or so.
I know. Used to talk to him all the time on Facebook.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice.
Yeah. He would talk. He would send me messages all the time. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, that made a big splash when that came out too. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really great. It's a really great conversion.
So whoever the artist who converted it got most of where I hid my name in the Drow set. I'm trying to remember exactly what it looks like. But it was like it says Joseph B. Hewitt, and it's hidden in the one of the wall pieces. And it also said Arion.
And he removed it?
No, they actually highlighted it so you could read it, because in the VGA version, you really had to know that you were looking for it to see it. It also said Arion, which was my handle on that multiple BBS back then, Arrion, not to be confused with Arian, which is something else altogether. I used to have Arion on my license plate, my MR2, and I was pulling into my apartment complex, and there was this guy walking in front of the car, like where you're driving, no shirt, low-ride jeans with a big, huge, like Bowie knife stuck down the back of his pants. And my girlfriend got like the covered spot, so I had to park one of the visitor spots. And it turned out the only place open was this apartment where the window got broken every weekend. It was like the party house, the party apartment. And that's where he was walking into. So I'm parking right in front. And he turns around, he looks at my car, and he goes, "Oh, you white power dude?" And I'm like, "No,
shit,
no, I'm getting a different license plate." So that's when I switched to my initials instead of my handle. That's my license plate.
What was the general process in creating art at Westwood? So I think it's a little bit nebulous for me how that worked back in the day.
Well, back in the day, so we used Deluxe Paint, and then more Deluxe Animator, which was just Deluxe Paint that had multiple pages. So I have CD-ROMs with old Westwood art on them, all the art files for like Eye of the Beholder, Corandia, but they're all saved as Deluxe Animator files. And I have been searching for something that will convert Deluxe Animator files into individual anything frames that could be read today. I've talked to some people who were like, "Oh yeah, I started working on that, but yeah, I kind of, so I got nothing." But we were using Deluxe Animator up until Tiberian Sun. Even though those aren't 256, limited to 256 colors, it still allowed us to control the color palette. So each individual item was a 256 color piece of art, but we could say, hey, these 16 colors right here, this is the remap color, because it wasn't easy to like remap his stuff back then like it is now. So that way, that's how I even got on to Command and Conquer, because I was just going through the directory going, why are they doing a tan building and a red-gray building? One for GDI, one for Nod. They're going to have multiplayer. Are they going to make 8 different colored pieces of artwork? So I asked Joe Bostic, and he's like, I don't know. I keep bringing this up. Nothing keeps happening. Because they were just showing stuff in demos. And that's how like the terrain was being done. They would do mock-ups, and Brett would say, "Oh yeah, that's great," and then give him something else to do. There was like not communication between the artist. He wasn't communicating to Brett. Like, I didn't do the tile set. I just did a mock-up. They found that when they were starting to build the missions, it's like, okay, we got the cliff sides for the front facing and the left facing, but that's it. and all the pieces don't attach to all the pieces. And like there's a river piece that's just one piece of artwork that goes from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. It's not cut up. So I'm discovering this as I'm just looking through the directory, and I'm asking Joe about it, and he's like, I don't know. So I'm like, screw it, I'll just start doing it. So I had just finished Lion King, and all my artists were coming off Lion King. So I just started assigning work without asking anybody, and sort of took over as the in-game art team, and did all the art. So Matthew set the look. Brett wanted it to look like satellite pictures, which, at the time it wasn't quite what we get now, but it has that pixelated satellite picture-y look to it, that pseudo-realism as best we could do back in the early 90s. And I've looked at the remastered version, Red Alert, and I absolutely hate it.
So to discover all your backup CD stuff, you basically need Deluxe Paint Animator running in a virtual machine?
Probably, yeah. Electronic Arts stopped supporting Deluxe Paint Animator because the only people using it were other game developers. It was the drawing program for a couple decades. So that's another C64 picture, the Mars Saga title page. It's probably one of the first things I did at Westwood. You can say by the fat pixels.
For C64, they are not that fat, so yeah.
Yeah, when I was working at Interzone, Lisa was playing Lion King on her computer. And I'm like, what are you playing? And she's like, oh, it's this Lion King game. It's just like one of the most hard, like, platform games. It's just so fun. It's like, in the platform community, it's like considered like the last of the classics. And I'm like, I drew all that, right?
I just remembered it. There is a I don't know, design document, storyboard, and then you go very procedural through all the scenes and assets that have to be painted. But it was more like Wild West. We are starting here and let's see where we end.
Yeah, we're doing stuff. We had tools other than that. So we had a program called Weiss. So Westwood made money by making tools and selling them to other developers. Weiss, WICE, Westwood Icon Character Editor. So you remember back in the day, character graphics were just meant 8x8 pixels out of a 255 character set. A character was 8x8 pixels. And that's how like the Nintendo graphics worked, the Sega, Super Nintendo, all those old systems used what we back then called character graphics. I think so. They're now just mini tile graphics is what they probably call them now. I designed what we called Mega Weiss because the Sega Saturn was the Mega Drive in Japan. So I wanted something that would allow me to do character art for the Sega when we started doing other console stuff. It shipped. They got Sega to pay for it. So it shipped with the development tools for the Sega Genesis in North America. The version that shipped, I don't know how complete it was because for the longest time, every time we hire a new programmer, the first thing they would do was have them add some feature to MegaWise. So we expanded the palette so it would work with the Super Nintendo color values. We added a feature where you could search your tile set and it would say, hey, these two tiles are 2 pixels apart. Maybe you want to replace this one with that one? And you could. So you could just keep scrunching the set down. So you could have a piece of artwork, feed it into MegaWise and say, make it a character set. And it says, okay, here's your character set. It's 590 characters. And you're all right, search for duplicates. And it's okay, I found 100 duplicates. You're now down to 400 and something. Okay, well now start similarities. These are 1 pixel apart. All right, replace all those. And it would just keep crunching it down until you got it down to 255 characters.
So that's another question I have. Sometimes I come across some conversions of pixel art that is very very bad because it feels like they just took the original image that was maybe made for, I don't know, 24 colors on the computer system A and ported it over to the 16 colors to computer system B, and no art had touched it because all the faces are green and stuff like that, so you
Yeah.
can see it's just cheap conversion job. The Westwood art always looks like some human.
Yeah, so back then, though, we didn't even have those scanners, or at least not at Westwood. So we were doing it all by hand. The most technically I got was I remember working on Order the Griffin on the TurboGrafx. I would take a piece of cellophane and put it over a picture I wanted, and then take like a dry erase marker or a black marker, and it would trace on it. And then I take that cellophane and put it on my monitor, and then just draw it. So I would, get the proportions and the shape, and try and pull it together.
Mm-hmm.
That's as much of a scanner as we had then. It wasn't until Lands of Lore, like one of the spell effects is a giant hand that comes out and like smacks in front of you and pounds the fist. Rick Park took Polaroids of his own hand and then scanned that in, but then he, completely cleaned it up by hand, so it looks all hand drawn.
Yeah, speaking of Rick, when came he on to Westwood? I think it's Dragon Strike or Battletech.
So we were Dragon Strike. Dragon Strike, Carandia 1. Carandia 1 was the first stuff he worked on. Because I remember one of the first things he did was the tree with the garnets on it. Carandia, by the way, was based on a multi-user BBS game that we played on Multicom for the major BBS systems. And there's a whole legal battle that went over that because the kid, who was literally a kid who sold us the rights, then sold his company to the major BBS guy who ran major BBS. But I think he must have told him that he didn't sell us Carandia, and it went to court, and it got thrown out. This guy tried to spin it, and
He sold you guys the rights, but not Carandia?
No, he sold us the rights to Carandia.
Oh.
But then he sold, so he had he formed his own company and was doing this stuff, these Carandia games, Quest. I think he did Quest of the Alchemist too, maybe. I'm not sure. It's another BBS game. But he sold his entire company to the guy who owned the major BBS system, which was the software that ran these multi-user BBSs.
Yeah.
And we think what happened is he told that guy that he was selling him Carandia too. It was all in part of the company.
Oh.
And then he finds out that we're putting out a Carandia game, and the kid's like, "Oh, I don't, they ripped me off. They took."
I don't know these guys. I don't know.
Well, it's more like they took advantage of me, that sort of thing. This story kind of changed from what they initially said to what they claimed in court. But yeah, it got tossed out of court with prejudice. This is some of my first artwork for Unicorn Software.
Wonders of the Animal Kingdom.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's how the covers of the early 80s were, essentially. At least it has color. So how do you came into making digital art?
So when I was going to Unicorn as a student, I was just so enamored with the whole, oh my God, computers are just so cool. So at home, on a piece of paper, I wrote a basic program that plotted graphics onto the screen that drew the trench from Star Wars, the Death Star trench. And that's all it did. The program just made the picture. It just put dots on the screen and drew lines, command, and all that sort of stuff. And they were like, "Oh wow, you do art." My grandfather was an artist in Philadelphia, had an art gallery. And so I had always been drawing, doing pictures, playing Dungeons and Dragons, drawing pictures of my characters and dragons and monsters and that sort of stuff. So they're like, "Hey, why don't you try drawing? You know, we got this game called Animal Kingdom. They had it on the PC, the IBM. I think it was actually an IBM back then. And you know, we want to convert. We're doing the Commodore 64 version. Why don't you see if you can draw the pictures for that?" And we can rip you off and pay you with a koala pad.
Nice of them. After Rick came on board to Westwood,
So I was telling you that he drew that as a test. So he had been drawing stuff and posting them on BBSs, on Amiga BBSs.
Yeah,
so
I remember his Mickey Mouse,
the Mickey Mouse glass.
Yeah,
that picture of Einstein.
Yeah.
And there was a couple
Beautiful.
more, and I might have them.
They are online. I looked them up.
But they don't look as cool as they did because you're not seeing them on an Amiga monitor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he had that stuff to show. So he did one of the scenes for Corandia with the tree with the garnets, and then we hired him, and then he did a bunch more. So a lot of those backgrounds are his. He defined the look of Corandia, all the Corandia games. But at the end of the project, he had gotten so much better at those type of graphics that he had to go back in and redo the garnet tree because it just didn't hold up to the latter stuff he did.
Yeah.
And we were all commenting at the time, like, when he did that picture at first, we were like, oh my God, this is the best. This is amazing. And then at the end of the project, we're like, wow, that kind of sucks. Your other stuff is so much better.
Yeah, so in another post, you wrote something like he was very important for the mood and the color palette and the vibrant colors and the dithering. He had some kind of, I don't know, natural talent for dithering and shading. It looks so perfect.
This is a PNG file. This is a Rick picture that's probably not very seen. I think you do it on the PC. I don't know why it's a PNG file and it appears to be it animates, but it doesn't animate.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So you imagine that on an old screen monitor where that dithering disappears and it's just it's smooth, different color shades. But he's a real artist. We were all just game artists. And as it turned out, when I was a kid, we used to go up to the Mount Charleston Lodge, and it would, we would eat hot chocolate and play in the snow because it snows up there. Which, like every phone book from the 80s would have a picture of Mount Charleston seen from the desert. So you see all these cactuses and then eventually snow on cactuses. It was like, whoever was the editor for the phone book thought that was just the coolest thing to see snow in the desert every freaking year. He painted a mural that's above the bar. Find out years later that it was Rick. Unfortunately, the lodge burned down a couple years ago.
Oh, no. I mean, burned the bar down in the wildfires.
Oh, I'm going to my guess is it was an insurance fire. It was a very old building.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that looks beautiful.
And his signature is down on the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Bottom left, there's something like...
Yeah. Rick Parks, 1977. I don't know where I found these, but at one point in time, I had my late father with me drove up. Obviously, the date's right there, 4/29/2009. We drove up to the lodge and took those pictures specifically to make sure we had a copy of them. And I just started searching online for all the Rick Park pictures I could find. And yeah, the Bryce Canyon and the Clipper ship. I don't think I've seen anywhere else.
So you both worked close together?
Yeah, Rick was a great guy and he would help out. So Lion King, I was having real troubles getting started on that first level. And I just couldn't find a look because it had to have some verticality for gameplay. And when we first started Lion King, they they couldn't send us anything officially because it was like, hey, this game has to be done in 6 months, has to come out when the movie comes out, and we're just now starting contract negotiations. So it would take like 2 months to do the contract negotiations, but we had to start work right away. So things got sent to us under the table. We got pictures, printouts of stills from the movie. We got a cassette tape that somebody had been collecting songs at Disney, and a copy of a copy of a copy that got left on somebody's dashboard in the sun for a year, and a copy of a copy of a copy of that. But it had like the Lion King songs on early versions, including James Earl Jones singing one of the songs, which got cut because it was not very good. However, I think they released that as part of like one of the anniversary collections. But we also got on there songs from Aladdin before they completely changed the story, back when it was him and his 3 brothers, and it was all about high adventure, and his mother was still alive, and he's not an orphan. We got the Electric Light Orchestra Parade back before that song had ever been released on anything, though you can get it now. And a bunch of other, like Song of the South, which you can't get in the U.S. Because it's kind of racist. But all those old songs on there, too. Zippity Doo Dah and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's where we got the music to start working. And I couldn't get started. So Rick drew me one picture with that orange lighting and the shadows and all that sort of stuff, and like one little outcropping. I used that 320 by 200 pixel picture to then make the entire level. I just aped his style, took pieces, re-expanded it, and did all sorts of stuff and that's where that level came from. Because he was a master at color as a real artist, and I was not very good at color selection. So like if I needed to draw something that was gold, I would load up the Eye of the Beholder title page and steal the gold colors that he used for the logo.
So the blue Eye of the Beholder Westwood logo is also Rick?
Yes, that's his marble background as well.
I love that.
Yeah. That's the Eye... Is that the... There's another Eye of the Beholder that's written in gold, all in gold. It wasn't. Or even just that gold border around the red letters. I would color sample those colors, and I said, okay, I need like 6 colors to draw something in gold, and I would take 6 of those values because they're not pure yellow, they're mixes of orangey and bright. He was just really good at that. And most of those portraits, so that Mike Legg, that was him. Aaron Powell drew me. He drew, I don't know who drew Edie. I think Aaron drew Phil. Rick drew Aaron, Paul, and Frank. So I know Aaron did me and Phil. I don't know which of them did Edie, though. And if you play Order of the Griffin, I took those portraits and put them in there. But at the time, I had colored the top of my hair with sun in, so it had that 80s bleachy look.
Yeah.
So I went in and rechanged my hair to match my hair at the time.
Oh, right. I was wondering how deeply involved Wizards of the Coast, so the owner of the D&D, or SSI were in the Eye of the Beholder games, or all the D&D games.
So it was still TSR back then.
Oh, yeah,
right.
Then. It was TSR, yeah.
They did have a strong hand on it. Had to be Dungeons and Dragons. So that's a huge handicap.
Yeah. Because
Dungeons and Dragons was balanced as a tabletop game. For example, you have to rest to rememorize your spells. So there you are, just resting for 3 months in the middle of a dungeon corridor to get all your spells back. It is technically pretty unrealistic. But we had to secretly go behind their back and do things to make sure that level progression was fast enough that you could, because as a game design, you want your characters to level up, you get new spells, and you make progression. So there are squares in the maze where you get experience points every time you cross over them.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know where they are anymore. I don't know how many of them there are, but I know there's at least one.
Oh, so you put in cheats so that the player could level faster than the original pen and paper rules allowed?
Yeah. And I remember working on Hillsfar. There's the equestrian thing where every time you went somewhere, you had to ride the horse and jump over the fences and the hay barrels and puddles and that sort of duck when the bird flew by. It's just one graphic of you riding the horse, but it looked like the character was wearing a helmet. So no matter which character you're playing, it's the same, we didn't draw like a wizard character, a fighter character, a thief character, just one character. So they're like, well, if you're playing a cleric, he can't wear plate armor, and that looks like he's wearing a plate helmet. So I remember Lewis just like this look on his face, like holding his head, like, please explain the difference. Because they were like, oh, make it a skull cap. It's like, please explain the difference between a helmet and a skull cap in 2 pixels or less. It's literally a white pixel and a gray pixel. That's what it was. So we're like, okay, it's a skull cap now. And they're like, okay, thanks. Changed nothing. We just told them, okay, we made it a skull cap. Oh, it looks much better. Because we only had 16 colors to begin with, but so stuff like that.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think I don't know if it was something I wrote or something someone else wrote. Somebody mentioned magic points, and they were like, no, or mana, or some magic points or mana or something like that. And they were, no, we don't have that in Dungeons & Dragons. We had to reword that. And I don't think it was me who called someone a hobbit, one of the things a hobbit, and they're like, no, hobbits trademarked by, we're already getting sued by Tolkien, they're halflings. So that sort of stuff. But yeah, Eye of the Beholder was the biggest selling, like, outsold anything SSI had ever done. They were completely bowled over by how much Eye of the Beholder sold. The game they didn't want to make because they didn't think it would work.
Yeah, but there was Wizardry that had this dungeon crawling style. Wasn't by 98 also Dungeon Master on the PC?
No, Dungeon Master on the PC didn't come out till much later, and it was just a direct port. They didn't VGA it up.
No.
So it still had all the 16 color graphics from the Amiga.
Yeah.
So we were like excited that Dungeon Master was finally going to be on the PC, and then we got it. We're like, wow, swing and a miss.
Yeah, it took him 4 or 5 years to convert. I remember. Yeah.
They should have redone the graphics with VGA graphics instead of keeping it in 16 color.
Yeah.
And it felt a lot clunkier. By that time, Eye of the Beholder 2 was already out by that time. So it was much smoother. So there's a thing that I came up with that I was very proud of at the time. If you play any of those other 3D games and you're walking down a straight corridor and you press forward, it looks like nothing's happening. And if there's like a decoration on the wall, it looks like the decoration is just teleporting along the wall. But in Eye of the Beholder, I came up with a system where there's 2 versions of that side wall. There's 2 versions of every wall, and they're offset.
Mm-hmm.
The floor and ceiling, the background picture that makes up the floor and the ceiling, is also divided in half, where one side is half a step offset of the other side.
Oh.
So with the 2 different wall sets that are halfway off, if you walk down a corridor, you see the bricks moving up. You see things on the floor that look like they progress toward you.
Mm-hmm.
So every frame, you actually feel like you're taking a step forward.
Yeah.
And Dungeon Master didn't have that, obviously. So, and there are a lot of places where there's straight corridors.
Yeah. So moving on with Lands of Lore, I remember, I think I was 16 or so. I was early on into 3D stuff. I started with Porphyry and on Linux, and then moved over to Reflections. Then I got my hands on a copy of 3D Studio. I think it was R2, but it was very buggy, and the crack was very buggy, not the software. And after that, I decided to buy Lightwave 5.0 or something like that. And I was very into 3D rendering and always tried to render stuff I saw online. And of course, Babylon 5 and some Star Trek was made with Lightwave. But also on the box of Lightwave, I still have it here, is on the cover is, I think, some scene from Lands of Lore 2. So I think with Command & Conquer, there was a huge shift into 3D rendering, but for me, it was really Lands of Lore 2.
So at the time at Westwood, there was a big internal war with the artists. There was the Lightwave people and the 3D Studio / 3D Studio Max. I don't know when it changed over to Max, but it was around that time. So, for example, when we got the license to do Blade Runner, we had to go to whatever the company is that owns Sir Lad, Sir something, two words. And a bunch of companies were bidding for the license. Rick Parks in Lightwave did the scene where the spinner flies in over the city and you see the Coca-Cola advertisement with the Chinese lady eating something.
Yeah, that's on the Lightwave CD. That's an example on the Lightwave CD.
He did that in Lightwave, and we showed that. So there was several companies that were bidding for the thing, and we showed that, and two companies were like, "Don't even look at our demo." No. They thought at first, like, "Why are you showing the movie?" And then when they realized that no, this was a 3D render, they left.
Interesting.
But that had to be redone in 3D Studio to run in the game because the way it imported files.
Oh.
So Rick Parks did the original, and Aaron Powell took his converted files, but had to convert it into 3D Studio to get it into the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a lot of those early videos for Lands of Lore where stuff was done in Lightwave and in 3D Studio because one artist preferred Lightwave, one artist preferred 3D Studio. And I remember the whole thing became like a joke. Like everybody was just making fun of the artist because they were like, "Oh, Lightwave! I like Lightwave. Ooh, 3D Studio is so much better. In 3D Studio, I can do this." And we would just make fun of them. But eventually, 3D Studio won out because it was the easiest for the programmers to take the artwork and get it into games. But yeah, all the 3D stuff started with early Command and Conquer, doing the video combined with renderings and stuff. That was sort of like a skunkworks where they didn't think that was going to work. And oh crap, what's his name? It'll pop to me in like 5 minutes. But they went off and they just did a video. Joe Coogan being Kane in Command and Conquer was just a test footage of him, yelling at the camera and pointing at the camera, and
he nailed it.
That's how he became Kane. He had to actually renegotiate with Westwood because they were making him Kane, and he's a professional actor, award-winning director and actor. He got some huge award for doing a version of the Elephant Man, but he also ran Children's Rainbow Company, which was a play production company and stuff. And I did Big River, that he directed, which is the musical Huckleberry Finn. But anyway, so they were making him Kane, and he was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, I'm part of the union. We gotta have a talk." And so I guess that all worked out. I don't know any of the details, but I just remember at the time he was like, "Hey, you just can't make me Kane because I work for you as casting director."
So how do your skills evolved into the 3D era?
Mine didn't. That's my big problem. That's what partly killed my career, because while all that stuff was happening and all the artists were learning 3D, I was very good at that character art, at tile art. I was doing Lion King when a lot of the artists were learning 3D. I was doing the Command and Conquer tiles while everybody else was doing the movies. I found recently one of my performance reviews and then my response to the performance reviews, where I was very upset that some things were said in my review. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I'm doing these 600 plus tile pieces for Command and Conquer by myself, no supervision, no direction. I'm just making it up as I go along, and I need help. They're talking about maybe outsourcing some of it, and I'm like, if you can find anybody that can do this and make sure these tile pieces all line up the way they're supposed to, and make a whole comprehensive set where you can put the cliff pieces next to the river pieces and they all just line up, don't contract them, hire them. I need the help. But yeah, so I was very good at that technical art and never really got to do 3D stuff. And I got into doing art on the computer because I saw on television a behind the scenes video showing the 3D artwork in The Last Starfighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so cool. And I was like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And of all the artists at Westwood, I was the one who really never really got into 3D.
Yeah.
Though at that time, after that, I sort of went into game design,
Mm-hmm.
more of a content designer, story, quests, world building maps, and sort of that sort of stuff, because that's what I really actually like doing. And that sort of ended my art career.
So, do you still do art for yourself or as a job?
If you go to my Twitch page, which I haven't been streaming in since I switched jobs, but like I made a giant background of all the games I've worked on and the banner.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. I can still mess around with Photoshop. I'm not a good artist. I'm a good technical artist.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come to me and say, look, this picture has, back in the day, it's a 256 color, but we need to squeeze it down to 32 colors. I could do that, and people would go, well, did you do it? I'm like, all right, that's the 16 color version. I remember we had a meeting, and somebody said, it might have been me who said the words, convert the graphics down to the Amiga. And it was just like silence in the room, like, oh my God, we've gotten to the point where we've surpassed the Amiga. Just because we had more colors.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my job. It's like taking all the eye of the beholder artwork and converting it down to the Amiga. So the last artwork I did, I was working at Jet Set Games, which was founded by ex-Westwood people. So it was Brett's company. Roddy Sisalovich was co-founder with him, and he was the guy running the studio. Me, Adam Isgreen, who was game designer on Red Alert and Tiberian Sun. No, Joe Garnett. I can't remember his name. He ran one of the playtest groups at Westwood, and he was another designer. So I did a game called Highborn on the iPhone, on mobile devices.
Mm-hmm.
And before I got there, they were doing a lot of stuff. They had a bunch of concept art commissioned from some company, and they didn't really have a game design. It really wasn't cohesive, and they were still kind of touchy-feely about like, what does this game want to be? Some bad things happened. They hired me, and it was just like, you need to make this a game, and we can't undo existing work, and this is what you got. So I did a lot of the artwork, or redid other people's artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get the game anymore because since Jet Set shut down, and as iOS and Android versions keep going, somebody has to keep up doing it. I have an iPad that it was really old, that I stopped connecting to the internet just so I can keep playing the iPad version of it.
Mm-hmm.
They did a Steam version, but that's what I quit / got told to, because the only thing good about Highborn, it was a turn-based strategy game, was it was actually funny. The reviews at the time were like, hey, this is actually kind of funny. And it was just like, the characters talking to themselves as you're playing the game. The villain would pop up and say something, and you have like a hero character and then all your other units, and they would make quips back and forth and stupid jokes. And it started as like me just writing some test dialogue, just to throw some stuff in there just to make sure that the pop-up windows are working the way they're supposed to. and everybody thought it was kind of funny. So we just kept running with it, and we put out like 3 chapters of it. So there's like 24, what, 8 times 3, 24, 16, yeah, 24 missions, and it was well received. It's got its own TV tropes page, and I'm making like weird references. And our my producer, she got an email from an old friend making fun of her for the Gilmore Girl references in Highborn. And she's like, actually, that wasn't me. That was the lead designer. Let me forward your mail to him. So I start talking to this guy, and I'm like, wait a minute. How do you know they're Gilmore Girl references if you didn't watch Gilmore Girls? And he's like, okay, I'll tell you what I did. And he sends me a link to a website. And I guess he had a deal with his wife. And his wife says, I want you to watch Gilmore Girls. And he's like, okay, I'll watch Gilmore Girls with you if you watch The Shield with me, the Michael
Yeah.
Chiklis cop show. So he put together a web page, and down the left side are all the characters from Gilmore Girls, and down the other side are all the characters from The Shield. And there's a bit of text in between that describes the character, but it applies to both the Gilmore Girls character and the Shield character. It's like the best friend who will do anything and will come. It was hilarious. Unfortunately, this site's not there anymore, and I don't know who the guy is. But it was absolutely hilarious. But I had just finished watching Gilmore Girls when I was doing that, so there are a ton of Gilmore Girl references in there, to the point where Sarah, my producer, yelled at me and was like, no more Gilmore Girls references. So there was a short story somebody had wrote called Glory Gilmore or something. And it was just a stupid little short story about a sci-fi convention.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character's last name was also Gilmore. So I made a reference to that. And so she came yell at me. I did it. I'm like, no, that's a different reference. That's Glory Gilmore. It's a short story.
Yeah, totally
reference.
different.
Totally different. Doesn't count.
Okay, so I'm running out of questions, but are you still playing old games?
I haven't played anything since I originally got married in like 2018, 2019. So when my wife got me into streaming, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to go stream Eye of the Beholder. Somebody had just done a complete playthrough. There's a dungeon crawling Discord group, dungeoncrawlers.org. So they did I guess they do every year, sometimes twice a year, a game jam for old school dungeon crawlers. And I was the judge for them a couple years ago. And I was figuring I'd wait till that guy's Eye of the Beholder playthrough had kind of faded away. And then, yeah, I want to definitely play Eye of the Beholder again. See my most famous piece of artwork that got me the most praise, the portal opening up in Eye of the Beholder.
Mm-hmm.
That's an 8-frame animation that I did. I've had people tell me, like, yeah, when I was in college, I was sound asleep in my dorm room, and my roommate burst into the room and shook me awake. Like, oh my God, I just opened a portal to another world. You got to come see. There was a guy who worked at SSI, and he was somewhat famous for being like a tabletop RPG creator. McDonald. He created the hero system, which I used to play a lot back in the day. I haven't played like the fantasy version of the hero system. But anyway, he was one of the main creators of that. And he was working at SSI back then. And when I did that, and he was like, can you give me a copy of that animation? I want to show that to some people.
Are planning to play Out of the Beholder again?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe go 1, 2, and then...
Not 3, Lands of Lore.
Yeah, Lands of Lore.
Yeah.
Which is...
That's the official order. 1, 2, Lands of Lore.
Yeah. So there's some of my stuff in Lands of Lore 2, but not much. I did a lot of stuff for Lands of Lore 2 that did not got used as intended. That project kind of went off the rails and took years. I remember we went to Gen Con year after year after year, and people were like, you keep showing Lands of Lore 2. it's been 3 years now. What the hell? But I did a whole level, but I did it the way like it was a monastery where one of the characters was supposed to be,
Hmm.
and you would meet up with her. But in my version, like you walked across the garden and into the monastery. The 3D system that they had built had a bug where you're connecting rooms, but I exploited that bug to fake a second story. And the programmers came into my office and they're like, "How did you do this?" Because it was just like you're just connecting rooms and you say this room goes to this room goes to this room. And just making it circular so it looked, if you look at the map, it would look like, you just go off to the right and then make another right turn, make another right turn. You think you're back in the same room, but that's not the way they connected.
Oh,
So
right.
it
Yeah.
was a separate room that just was occupying the same space as the first room, and it worked. So it looked like you went around the corner. There were some stairs. You went up the stairs. You turned the corner again, and now you're in the second story. And they were just blown away. I'm like, "Why? I thought that's how it's supposed to work." And they're like, "No, that's a bug." um, yeah. So and I had like you would go into Don's room, and there were a 3D desk, and if you clicked on the drawer would open. There were like three drawers, but it was like every version of the combination. So there was three squared pieces of artwork. The top drawer open,
Oh,
and then the middle drawer open, and then the bottom drawer open, then the top drawer and the middle drawer, the top drawer and the bottom drawer, all three drawers, because that's the only way it could work.
yeah.
And I remember doing some weird background, so it looked like you were looking out the window, and the world background thing actually looked like a forest and a mountain in the distance, kind of like how Doom does with the
Sky
painted
map.
sky background. But
Yeah.
they weren't doing that. Everybody else was just doing like interior dungeons, and I'm like, no, it's a real place, and you can go in, and here's a secret door, and you can go down to the catacombs where there'll be skeletons. And I never got to finish it, and the programmers kept using. They're trying to do a console version, but I don't remember what console it would have been. It might have been like Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo era, but it might have been GameCube, the next generation, and Saturn. I'm not sure, but they failed. They couldn't get it running on that system. It was just the system was not powerful enough to run the game. But they kept using my level to test it because it was the only one that was you know any fun to run around in. But the artist then took all my assets and used it throughout the rest of the game. So when I remember
Hmm.
playing the game and walking, I'm like, hey, this is my hallway graphic. Hey, look, there's my hanging plant.
So you did a little bit 3D, right?
Yeah, I did do a little bit 3D stuff. Pirates: The Legend of Black Cat.
Hmm.
I did a bunch of that, which is a horrible game. It was one of the games that killed Westwood because it missed Christmas. And it was just a case of the people in charge weren't really paying attention to the team, and things kind of got out of hand and went in a direction they shouldn't have gone in. There was a bunch of artists who were 3D artists who didn't understand a game graphic. That's also a PlayStation 2 game, so it wasn't
Yeah.
really a powerful system. But they made a pirate ship, and the interior of the pirate ship is all done, and the cannons that are on the pirate ship, like down in the hold, sticking out the little porthole,
Hmm.
the entire cannon is 3D modeled, including the base, the wooden thing it sits on. Polygons you would never see, but they're there.
Hmm.
So it's dragging the game down. And we couldn't do a lot of. There was no. You would think back then on a game where you're sailing around on a pirate ship and then you land on the island, you'd get a loading screen and then you're on the island. And it's all the island. No, in this game, it was just one big giant world. So when you got off your boat's still sitting there with all its polygons, and the
Hmm.
island is there even when you're sailing around. There was LODing and stuff, but still, it was just it wasn't optimized at all. And the fact that the game design had gone there without somebody saying, "Hey, this is a bad idea. We don't do this, don't do that." By the time the person in charge started paying attention again, it was too
Yeah,
late.
but that was under EA, right?
Well, it was a project that had been running when EA bought us that they, I'm not going to say who, somebody didn't tell EA that was one of our projects we were currently running. Um, and it was sort of like a surprise. And it was more like Seven Cities of Gold, if you remember that game from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was like a 3/4 top down.
Yeah.
You're a pirate. You go down and you fight off the natives and trying to find treasure and other pirate ships and fight off the British and the French and the Spanish and all that sort of stuff going on. But it was top down. How that became a action adventure title, I can't even tell you. But somewhere along the line, I got pulled off of Earth and Beyond because I did something for them, and they said, "Look, Hewitt's been on the game for 2 weeks and he did one thing, and it's vastly improved the game. Why don't you let us have him full time?" And then so I got pulled off Earth and Beyond and put on that, which is also what got me in the first round of layoffs because that was once that game shipped, that team was gone.
Do you remember Nox?
Nox is one of the very few games at Westwood that I did not work on. Westwood bought Nox from the programmer, and they like those independent guys that showed up at E3 and they had there's like an independent hall, and they're just demoing their game trying to find a publisher. That was him. Westwood saw it and said, "Hey, we like this," and bought the game. The guy who originally made the game, he thought it was, "Hey, this game's just about done." And Westwood was like, "No, no, 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 no. We got a lot of work," and built the whole story and added so I really wasn't involved. I watched some guy do a video and he asked me some questions about it not too many years ago, but I learned a bunch of stuff watching his video about about how things changed during the game. So there's only like 3 games at Westwood over that entire span that I didn't have at least something to do with. Um, Even down to
Nox, Blade Runner, and
Blade Runner. Have you heard my story for Blade Runner?
no.
So I was on the project in the very beginning. I am the huge Blade Runner fan. I love Blade Runner. I saw it in the theater as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a bunch of design work, a bunch of technical design work, and then was it Lion King that took up most of my time? I think it was Lion King, then Monopoly. With Monopoly, I only drew the board because nobody else could draw it. They were all the 3D artists, and they just kept scanning the board
Mm-hmm.
and then shrinking it down and go, "Wow, this looks awful. I don't know what to do." I'm like, yeah, you got to go in there pixel by pixel. Anyway, so I was off the project and things kept changing. The game was developing, blah, blah, blah. So at the end, the only thing left in the game that I had anything to do with was the Windows icon. And it's that silhouette of Deckard running. Like if you look at the Blade Runner logo, that little silhouette of Deckard, that's what it was. That's the perfect icon, right? So it was there. The last version I played, it was what I thought was the master that was going to go off the duplication. So nothing should change past that point. I got the actual boxed version after it got mastered in production, blah, 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 blah. The Windows icon was different. And when I was like, "What the fuck?" Everybody's like, "Oh, I don't know who did that." No, you're right. That shouldn't have changed. That was, I don't know. So nobody wanted to tell me what happened and why they took out the last piece of artwork. So nothing is left in that game of mine. I was so disappointed. However, I did design the team T-shirts.
At least
They were trying to like come up with something cool to say on them, like Tyrell Corporation, blah blah blah. And I'm like, obviously, it has to say more human than human. So that's what the team T-shirt said.
Yeah. Could you name your 3 favorite games without any Westwood titles?
The thing that really excites me in video games, still to this day, but it's kind of like burnt out now, and I don't play any of them, is I was big into the MMOs.
Mm-hmm.
So I played Ultima Online, and I loved it, except it was, It was probably like 2 years before its time. I think Ultima Online, had that come out 2 years later, technology was a little better, internet connectivity was a little better. Game design was kind of wild. Um, I was in a guild called KGB, Knights of Glory and Beer, and they're the guild that actually coined the term anti-PK. So they basically, there was people, player killers running rampant in
Oh.
Ultima Online.
Mm-hmm.
They were a guild that would hunt down the player killers and kill them. So Phil, the lead programmer for the Beholder, he was a big member of that guild, and he got me in. And because of that connection, when we moved over to EverQuest, I got into Afterlife. Afterlife was the most powerful guild in EverQuest. A lot of people who play EverQuest will go, "Don't you mean Fires of Heaven?" And I say no, because they had a best of the best tournaments every year where the guilds from different servers would fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Afterlife wiped the floor with Fires of Heaven. This was before I joined the guild, but I still say that. And then they moved on to World of Warcraft about the time I moved to Australia after Westwood. I briefly worked at Sony. I was a customer service rep on Star Wars Galaxies when it launched.
Mm-hmm.
But during the beta of WoW, Thought, who was one of the guild leaders of Afterlife, he made ThoughtBot. If you ever played World of Warcraft back in the day, the ThoughtBot website.
I never played any MMO.
Anyway, I drew the logo for the ThoughtBot website and got a lot of, of all the Westwood stuff I did, there was a time there when I was at conventions and talking about Westwood and people were unimpressed, and then I mentioned, oh yeah, and I drew the ThoughtBot logo. It's like, you drew the ThoughtBot logo? And it wasn't even the final version of the logo. Thought wanted something, and I was like, yeah, I don't really. He wanted it to be very simple because the internet was still. He didn't want to have to load a lot of assets, a big title page, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So he wanted it simple, like the Google page, where it's just white background and a logo.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I tried some things and he hated everything. So I'm like, okay, how about this? And I just drew this simple logo, and it was just thrown together. And if he liked it, I planned to iterate on it and make it better. But the next thing I know, I didn't hear from him. I go to the site and the logo's there, and he's like, "No, that's perfect. That's it. That's nice." So yeah, MMOs were my thing. So I spent many years, Ultima Online, EverQuest, World of Warcraft.
I never got into MMOs. Don't know why.
For the many times where I was at different companies, where I was at Interzone and at Jet Set, and we're like, "Well, what's another game we want to make?" And I'm like, now that consoles have analog joysticks, we got to do Descent. We got to redo Descent. And everybody's, oh my God, yeah, that would be great. And never got it done. I mean, I've done game design documents for a Descent-like game. They did a Descent 2, which was horrible because obviously the people designing it had just finished Descent 1. And there was no... If you picked up Descent 2 without having just come straight from Descent 1, you couldn't play it. But yeah, there was a revival, and there was another game. So they did a remastered Descent, and then some other game got funding.
Maybe 5 years ago?
And I remember I funded it, but I don't think I ever played it at the end. But they're all PC based.
Yeah.
And I'm like, with a modern controller, an interior based game, my premise was a salvage company, and there's ancient alien spaceships, out in the asteroid fields.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And you get government contracts to, salvage them. And, there's other companies with different governments, contracting them. And so, but mine was always more MMO-ish, where you build, you have a base inside these, these huge spaceships that are the size of planets. And, you get a little group together, and you could have your own little clan and have a base inside there. And, you're trying to extract all these alien tech and get it out to sell it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, that's all my questions I had, I think.
I think I told you all the good story. I told you the White Command and Conquer face of a thousand lies.
Yeah.
The Westwood lie. Oh, there's one. So when you started at Westwood back in the day, they told you the Westwood lie, and everybody knew the Westwood lie, so they would back it up.
Mm-hmm.
The story was Brett and Lewis had gone to an EA developer conference when they were doing, so before I got there, Mars Saga, which is Westwood's first original title,
Mm-hmm.
that they had a paper airplane contest out in the courtyard, and a paper airplane landed on the roof. This is all true. And everybody was worried that Brett and Lewis would come back, see a paper airplane on the roof, and know that they had been screwing off. So they had to get up there. The truth is, they got up on the roof because there's an access in one of the bathrooms where you go up through the ceiling and get out on the roof, and they got the airplane. But the story they started telling was that Matt Au, who was the original programmer of the Weiss program I told you about,
Mm-hmm.
got up on the railing on the balcony, did a backflip, and it landed on the roof. And that was the Westwood lie. So you would tell somebody. So somebody would tell me, and like, I remember we told somebody else who started. I think it might have been Ailey, and he was talking to Lewis later, who did not come in that day, and was talking to him on the phone, and he goes, "Yeah, they were telling me about this time Matt Au," and Lewis goes, "Did a backflip onto the roof? Oh my God, it was incredible. He was like, he just got up there because he's a martial artist. He's like a third-degree black belt, and he did this backflip, and it just like contorted his body around. It was like he was defying." So everybody knew the Westwood lie.
Yeah, that's funny.
The overall story with Westwood and Electronic Arts is kind of funny because so we got with Electronic Arts and we did the Mars Saga on the Commodore 64. And the secret to that game, by the way, is when you're in the casino and you win, leave the casino and come back
Okay.
and then start gambling again. If you lose, load your save game because the skill up happens if you leave the casino when you're ahead.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
That's how you raise your gambling skill. And then you raise your gambling skill up enough, and then you play the Keno game, and you just wedge your keyboard down with a heavy book or something, and then you come back the next day and you're rich. Um, Electronic Arts was doing like a restructuring or something because they lost money that year. I don't know, but they canceled the PC and Apple II port of
Mm-hmm.
the game. So Westwood said, well, according to the contract, then the rights revert back to us. And Electronic Arts said, no, they don't. We get to keep them. And then our lawyer said, yes, they do. And their lawyer said, no, you don't. And so they went to court and we got to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we made The Mines of Titan, which is the Mars Saga. Just the setting has moved to one of the mines of Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
Titan. Added some quests and stuff, and put out the Apple II and IBM version. So years later, we're doing that Shadowrun game, which now that I think about it, was through EA through FASA. Um, and I think, to be honest, at the time, there was only me and one other person part time doing stuff for the Shadowrun game. So I was doing some game design and map stuff, and I think one of the programmers might have been doing something. I don't even remember, but we weren't really doing stuff. And most of the effort was on other games. And we were just I don't know what the deal was going on with EA, but they were very upset with us about not making milestones or something, and they wound up canceling the game. And I think maybe legal got involved in that too about what they had to pay for the contract when they canceled the project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, it wasn't the BattleTech game. It was the game that shall not be named, which is funny because years later, a lot of years later, not like 10 years ago, a game came out with that same name. It was called Body Count, but it was a Shadowrun-esque setting. But it wasn't like officially Shadowrun. It was just like a future noir
Blade Runner Shadowrun setting, and it was called Body Count.
It wasn't it an action game from top-down perspective, something like that?
Yeah, but there
Yeah.
was nothing ever released from it. So how you would know that from Body Count? For the longest time, we weren't even allowed. No one said the name. It was just called The Game That Shall Not Be Named.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the actual Body Count that came out was that, because like I said, sometime in the early 2000s, a game came out called Body Count, but that wasn't it. And I remember there was I had some new computer on my desk that ran the character system, and it had like an animation system built in. I think it might have been a Mac of some flavor or another. Anyway, it got canceled. There was legal action about contract being paid out, blah blah blah. So I think we won we got what we wanted out of it. So technically, we won. Westwood won the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, it's like, aha, we're 2-0 with Electronic Arts. They buy out Virgin when we're part of Virgin and take over the studio and eventually close us down. So we won a couple battles, but in the end, Electronic Arts won the war.
Yeah. They also won the war against Bullfrog and Origin. Yeah.
Exactly. Buy all these studios for the license, because they wanted the Command & Conquer license. They wanted real-time strategy in their portfolio. So here's the most infuriating part of all that. So they put out all these Command & Conquer games. They suck. I didn't like Generals, but some people like Generals. Red Alert 2 was the first game done outside of Westwood. But it was done at Westwood Pacific, which was the old Virgin Games Irvine office.
Mm-hmm.
It was still play balanced, and a lot of the design control was Brett Lewis still. So that still feels like a Westwood game. Generals is the first one that was completely outside Westwood, and it's a different game. And some people like it. I didn't really think it was that great, and probably because I'm just biased. But then since then they put out a bunch of other games with the Command & Conquer license, and in my opinion they all stunk. I remember watching interviews like, yeah, we want to go back to the roots of Command & Conquer, where you did this and there was resource gathering, but it was da-da-da-da-da, and we want to go back to that. And then here's this thing where we just totally got rid of all resource gathering. It's like, but you just said. So while we were at Jet Set, Brett goes to EA and says, hey, I'll come back and I'll do another CNC game. And I got Adam Isgrim here. I got Joseph Hewitt here. I got Joe here. I got Roddy, who is the producer. And we'll staff up, and you can bill it as the return of the original Command & Conquer team. They said no. They were working on the Command & Conquer Facebook game. A game which was so bad, they put out a public beta test and canceled the game like 2 weeks later because the beta was so poorly received.
I didn't even knew there was a Command & Conquer Facebook game.
I don't know what it was. It was there and gone so quickly. But it was like you played through Facebook, and it got such a poor reaction that they just went ahead and canceled the game. But they could have had Brett Sperry back doing another Command & Conquer game.
I quit after Red Alert. No, that's not true. I played. What was the name? The 3D first-person Command & Conquer.
Commando.
Yeah, I like that.
Commando was Westwood too. That was a game that was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Because you can see elements of that in some of today's games. Base building during a RTS game, and deploying units and tanks and getting in the tank, and even in some of the Battlefield-esque games where some of that gameplay is still alive. So that was right at the very end. That came out, and they were talking about doing a Commando 2, and whether we should again use our own 3D license. Unreal came out and did a demo. I'm trying to remember what version of Unreal it was. So there was a time with Unreal Engine where you didn't build geometry, you hollowed out geometry.
Yeah, right. I remember.
And it was the last version of Unreal that did that. Because I remember we actually used that engine for a while in Fury when I was in Brisbane at RN Games. But they quickly convinced us to go to their new version of Unreal. But anyway, they demoed that version and were like, hey, use this, da, da, da. And it seems so easy. But of course, the programmers, they want to do their own program. They don't want to use somebody else's engine. And they eventually talked the bosses into using their own engine. And then Electronic Arts thought that decision was so bad that they just canceled that and laid off that team. And that was one of the other teams that got laid off before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was just the Earth and Beyond. And yeah, I think they were trying to do another. Mike's Leg was putting together a team that kept coming up with new Command and Conquer proposals that Electronic Arts didn't like and was laid off the team. And then it was nothing but Earth and Beyond. And then once that shipped, then they closed the studio.
Yeah. And I think nowadays they are run out of studios. They only make sports games and Battlefield.
Yeah. Playing old games. Like you remember, like going back and playing Dune 2 and the old interface.
Yeah.
By the way, that's another cool story. So in Dune 2, you would select a unit, and then you press the move button, and then you click on the screen where you want them to move. Or you click the unit.
You could also press M on the keyboard.
Yeah. But you had to do that extra step.
Yeah.
And if you played Warcraft, the first Warcraft, same thing.
Yeah.
However, I'm drawing the mouse cursors or cleaning them up. So I think a lot of them are rendered and redone. I'm hand cleaning up all these mouse cursors and drawing some mouse cursors. And so I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, well, if you want to move somewhere and you select a unit and you click on the ground, what else could that mean? You obviously want to move there. If you click on an enemy unit, you obviously want to attack them. Why do we need a move and attack button? And then the thought is, well, okay, you have things like the mobile construction vehicle or other vehicles that do something and they have to deploy. I'm like, well, that could be a right click, or we have other ways. We don't need this menu thing. So I talked to Joe Bostic and he talks to Brad and did it, and so that became how it worked in Command and Conquer. If you find the press demo for Warcraft 2, it has the old system where you click the unit, you click attack, you click the enemy unit, and then so the press demo for Warcraft 2 came out, then Command and Conquer came out, then Warcraft 2 came out. In between that time, they switched over to my system. And I've talked to people who were at Blizzard at that time, and they said there was like a huge internal fight with some people wanting to keep it the old way and some people going, well, no, that's stupid. This is obviously much better.
Also, the selection box is very innovative.
So they were limited. Like you could only select X number of units for the longest time in the early Warcraft games. And the game was balanced around that. So that was part of the game design balance where, yeah, you can't select every unit on the screen and tell them to attack that one guy. You can only do this and that. And I remember when they announced that, hey, now you could select unlimited units. And Joe Bostic was reading the article and he's like, they had a limit? Because we never had a limit on any. I don't even think Dune 2 had a limit to number of units. If you could stretch the cursor over the box over them, you could select them. Of course, then there was no like queuing up units in a factory. Grouping was something that came along at some point. Being able to switch
deployment
between
points.
And, yeah, all that sort of advanced stuff that wasn't there in the beginning. And you forget. And the other things like I preferred the Command and Conquer Dune 2 left right mouse button, however that worked. I can't even think about which is which. But Warcraft did it the other way. But their method is the one that stuck.
Oh.
So when I went back to play Dune 2, even though I preferred the Dune 2 method, I had completely forgotten it. And like, oh wait, now it feels right mouse button to the. I'm confused.
Yeah.
And just how low res those games are is quite a like. It's like I remember this. I don't remember like my view being this combined.
When you think back to Dune 2, you think you had more space on screen?
Yeah, and especially like how much the sidebar and stuff take up. Like,
Yeah.
even in Eye of the Beholder. Eye of the Beholder, the window for the 3D view is just that little cut thing in the corner. And there's like your party and all the buttons along the bottom. It's because, you just didn't have the RAM for all that sort of stuff back then.
Yeah, that remembers me. Did you guys play Ultima Underworld?
Yeah, I played. I loved the first Ultima Underworld. I
Yeah.
unfortunately encountered a game-breaking bug late in Underworld 2. There was something in the beginning of Underworld 2 where the servants are going on strike, and if you failed to do something and then went off to other parts of the dungeon and then came back, it was too late, and you couldn't progress anymore. Yeah, it soft-locked the game. But I played Ultima Underworld, the first one, several times.
Okay. That was a really nice talk.
Rambling and off-topic part of the time. But
I'll cut it together in the next weeks.
Cool. All right. Well, it was great talking to you.